Okay, everybody, this is Mark Pereira. Now we have a storm coming through, so I don't know how well our feed is going to go. So if it does, we'll just do it again some other time because I really want to get this information out here. I want to show everybody. We got everything hooked on the Wi-Fi, so we're just gonna play through this because we want to get this to you guys. It's a major discovery that we've kind of worked out over the last few months, and there's a lot of things that are coming about with this, and we really feel like this is going to change heathenry. This is going to change the way we look at bloats. This is going to change the way we look at how we view the symbolism of these rituals, and all of these different elements are coming together. And it was really just a discovery that we made, not really trying to or setting a purpose behind it. It was just something we found all these lines of convergence. We found all these symbols that connected and related to one another. Now what we're talking about is the layout of the ritual space, the layout of the entire ritual area. And this discovery was made in our translation of Voluspa. We were looking at verse 2, and there's this mention of these 9 Ivigir, the 9 woodwives. Now it typically gets translated as like 9 in the tree or 9 giantesses or whatever, and it's not the word. The word is Ivigir, and the vid part is wood. It's woodwives, right? So these woodwives are mentioned in folklore. They're mentioned in all sorts of different stories throughout European history. And it's a big part of the belief system if we're starting to break down these symbols. Now, what we're looking at here with that Ivigir is Heimdall, right? Heimdall is god of the hearth fire. His name means light of the home, or the shining one in the home. And what we discovered is what we're talking about here is if these 9 Ivigir, these 9 giantesses, are an important part of the ritual, that makes it a connection to the need fire. We see Thjalfi carries the need fire across Gotland, and it makes him, break a curse on that land. There's mention of it in Land Nummabok in the Erbigja saga. This need fire is an important part of it, and it may be possible that if Heimdall's mothers are 9 woodwives, then Heimdall, as representative of the need fire, his mothers represent the 9 woods that make the need fire. So in looking at all that symbolism, and we started to connect it to the idea of the world mill, right? Now the world mill is a story Victor Rydberg sort of reconstructed, and that's part of his reconstructive efforts into building the epic mythology. And it's a very important story because the thing that we found in looking at that is if this world mill is a part of the story, it is part of the lore, it is connected to it, then it puts it in the underworld, right? In Jormungandr. Now Jormungandr is a word that's mentioned in Hrafnagaldr Odin's, and we believe that this is the underworld. Now, the thing you're going to have to look at when you start and start to understand this is you got to break away from a lot of the Snorri Sturluson misconceptions. I'm not saying that Snorri Sturluson is completely useless. There's a lot of myths in there that we need from him, and they're vital. But there's a lot of times when he gets things wrong, right? So one of the things he gets things wrong is when he starts describing the 9 worlds and all these different things. Now, a lot of that also is misconstruing the very word of the 9 worlds, because there is no 9 worlds. There's no word. They're not using the word Veraldur. The word that's being used is Heimer, which means the 9 homes. Now it's very important to understand that cosmology, because what you're going to see when you're looking at that, when you're actually looking at the poetic Edda, the Eddic translations, and how those words are looked at in Grimnismal, and how that cosmology is built from the Eddic poetry, the original Eddic poetry, because Snorri is primarily a commentator on that poetry. And that makes him a secondary source in some senses. He's a primary source and a secondary source. But what happens is he built this cosmology, these 9 worlds, and some of these guys try to create like this, Kabbalah-looking tree with 9 circles on it that makes 9 worlds, and it's just not our lore. Our stories and our lore are built upon 3 realms. It's the tree. It's the tree of the 9 homes, right? And so these 9 homes are sacred. Heimdall is the god of the 9 homes, and if he is the god of the need fire protects the sacred area, the ritual area, right? And Heimdall protects Asgard. He wards the realms of that. So in his protection of that, he represents the protection of the sacred stead, the sacred area. And that sacred area then becomes the underworld. And we're going to show that. We're going to make that demonstration, okay? So what I've done here is I have my altar set up here, my stali, right? If it's stone, it's a hurg. If it's wood, it's a stali. Now this stali, I have this poster board set up to show the layout of Jormungandr, the underworld, all right? So we're going to look at how this breaks down and how this world is viewed. You have Niflhel in the north, Glasisfeller in the center, Helheim in the south, and then Surheim is beneath Helheim. You have Vanaheim in the west and Alfheim in the east. Okay, this is the underworld. These are the 3 world fountains. What we're looking at is a tree, because you're going to have the underworld, which is the ground that Gununga Gap grew out of. You know, this was Gununga Gap. The fire and the ice blended together and created Yggdrasil, and the tree becomes a tree. And that's why you have this whole notion. You know, you see these artists trying to draw the tree, the description of Snorri Sturluson, and it all becomes like this deformed tree where you have like a root over here and a root over here, and it's all like weird looking. It's because Snorri Sturluson actually took the world tree and turned it on its side. And he put a fountain in the lower world, and he put a fountain in Midgard, and he put a fountain in Asgard. And that's not a tree. That's a toppled over tree. That's literally a Christian saying, we chopped down the tree. And here it is on its side. And so the actual mythology, the actual Eddic lore shows us this cosmology. Now this is very significant for us in a ritual sense, because we can see that this layout becomes also the layout of the altar, of the stali. Because each one of the implements connects to a different thing within the underworld. So here, we're going to start with the bloat bowl. I use a quake because my family is from Scotland, and so I use a quake for the bloat bowl. All right. This represents Mimir's Well. This is Mimir's Well in the underworld. So you put that in the center where Mimir's Well go. It becomes the center point of the entire altar, of the entire stali. It connects to the underworld. It has that symbolism. And when we start to understand symbolism, and we start to understand its place within ritual, we start to figure out that the purpose of it all, the purpose of having a ritual, is to sort of layer those symbols upon one another, have all those deep, deep, deep layers that just go, and you're basically immersing yourself within a symbol in order to perform a ritual. Okay? So you have the well, the sacred well in the center. Okay? So then we talked about the need fire. Now I made this fire pot in order to perform this. You know, to represent the need fire. So I put 9 pieces of wood in here, light it on fire, and it becomes, you know, the need fire, right? So where is Vergelmer? Where is the world mill located? Because the fire represents that. The fire represents Heimdall. It represents the turning of the world mill, and those sparks create Heimdall. And his 9 mothers, who are the 9 wood wives, become the representatives of that. So because we know that the world mill stands right over Vergelmer in the lore, it becomes that symbol. That's what it represents. So we would put that in the north. And I'm kind of going backwards here so you guys can see, right? So it goes in the north in Niflhel. Now the thing is that you have to realize is that, you know, when you're performing a ritual, you're always facing north. And the reason why is because it's all about origins. Everything within the ritual is all about origins. It's praying to the gods because they are our origin. The gods are praying because they're looking to their origins. When we see the story of Aldumla, Buri is licked from the ice. And that is the origin of the gods. And so it says in Vegtam's Vida, which is a variant of Baldur's Dreams, or Baldur's Drummer poem, that Odin looks to the north and applies potent runes. And so therefore, they're looking to their origin, their place of birth. And every single one of these implements represents that origin. Okay? So the next one we're going to look at is the drinking horn. This is the Gjallar horn. This is the horn of Aldumla. This is the horn that the gods drink from, that Heimdall blows and Mimir drinks from. It's possible that there were 2 of them because Aldumla had 2 horns, and Mimir kills Aldumla, and this becomes the ritual element. Okay, so we have to ask ourselves, where did Aldumla perform her actions? Well, we just said she licked Buri from. That means she would be in the north. Therefore, we would place her within the north. So these objects go. Okay? So the next thing we can look at are the runes. This is the rune box I created. Sound is open. Let's grab a rune. The runes come from the Well of Mimir, right? So you would place that next to the Well of Mimir, right? Okay? So you start to see that the placement of the altar is starting to mimic the underworld. And we have that placement and have that recognition. Okay? The next, we have Thor's ceremonial hammer. Now, where does this hammer get made? In the story, we see it gets made in Alfheim. The elves made it, dwarves made it in Alfheim, the Dolkalfar, the dwarves, make it in Alfheim. That's in the underworld. We see that as part of the cosmology. So we would place that over there. Okay? So then we have different elements. We have the blade. The blade represents Ymir. I kept this in plastic so it doesn't get rusty. But so Ymir gets slaughtered by the gods, and he gets, that's part of his he's basically the primordial sacrifice. The gods cut his neck, and from his neck pours the blood. The gods cut him up. It's like a sacrifice. It's the first sacrifice. And they, from his body, they make the worlds. Just like when we have a sacrifice, we use all of these different elements of the animal to make clothes, and bones are used for things, and all these different elements of the animal are used, just like Emer. So Emer becomes a part of this, and we would see that he would be in the north as well. And so you can start to lay this out in your own way and see these elemental connections within this, right? Another one that we looked at, and this is really what we're finding out as we discover this, because every time we see the symbol, we see it within the underworld. It's like always connected to that, and that's where all these lines of convergence. And we can show you lore, and we can show you like Vedic connections and stuff like that. You have the next one we'll look at is the Lautane. Now the Lautane is a device for sprinkling. Some people try to connect it to the biblical sources or whatever, but our research led us to the Vedic sources, where we found the Madhukasa, which is the mead whip. It was a whip that was used to sprinkle mead upon the sacrifice. And so we see a sacrificial element. Now in our stories, mead, blood, and water sort of overplay each other. You see when Ymir's throat gets cut, the blood comes out, becomes the ocean. When Thor drinks from the horn in Utgard Loki's, that mead is also water. The three mead fountains are also, like Vergilmer's called the mother of all waters. So there's an overplaying of those symbols. So when we see sprinkling of blood, that's perfectly fine, because in the Vedic sources we also see sprinkling of mead. Mimir's blood is another name for mead, or it's like Haldrotnir's blood. So we can sprinkle this, and this becomes Yggdrasil. This is literally a symbol of Yggdrasil coming out of the fountain, coming out of these connections. So we use that to sprinkle that, and there we go. We have another element of the underworld coming out. You have the gander. The gander's around here somewhere. I can't find it. But the gander would be in the south, right? And that would be laid out. Now another one is the oath ring. The ring that the godly wears around their wrist that's passed around. Now this ring is in a serpent motif. The serpent motif is important. We see that in like the Volundark Vita, there is the serpent, they're called Lindboggi, which means the serpent-formed ring. And Odin's ring, Draupnir, which is probably the primordial oath ring, the ring of the gods, that drops 8 other rings. In Saxo Grammaticus, it mentions that a ring very similar to it, that someone tries to steal and it turns into a snake and kills them. And then, so you have the element of the serpent, and the idea behind that connects to the notion of keeping your oath. You keep an oath by promising it on the ring, and then if you violate that oath, that connects to Niflhel and the punishments of those who break their oaths that we see in Voluspa, and we see the idea of those punishments elsewhere. So once again, we would place this ring in Niflhel. That's where it goes. Okay, so you're looking at all these elements. You see all of these things coming together, and I'm telling you, like, there is a mountain of evidence that we can put on this. And we're going to write a book. I'm writing a book. There's going to be all of these things are going to be presented. All the source material is going to be mentioned. We're going to make all of these lines and everything work together. I don't want to spend 3 hours on this video, right? But the thing that we're looking at here that we have to ask ourselves, right, is that when we see religions like Shinto or Hellenism or Remuva or any of the ancient sources that are unbroken, Hinduism, and they build a temple, right? Their temple is always built around their cosmology. Okay, you see a Shinto temple and you see how they design it. It's built around their cosmology. Okay, so for us, when we're looking at that cosmology, that cosmological record, and how we view this, we look at Tacitus Germanium, we look at some of the other sources that tell us that our ancestors built most sacred thing that they would involve themselves in. Their most sacred area was their groves, and we all know that, right? So I was making a video on this because we're actually teaching all of this in an online university. This is going to be coming out hopefully within the next few months. And I'm teaching this video, talking about this altar layout and how all these things string together and how they work together, right? And I'm painting the picture of being in the grove and standing before the tree. And as I was doing that, I realized at that moment that when you're standing upon the tree, you're literally standing on its roots. You're standing in the underworld. And you're looking up and you see the trunk of the tree, and that's Midgard. And then you look up and you see the branches, and that's Asgard. And you connect that, and you see our ancestors, placed sacrifices in the limbs of the tree. And they were basically, recognizing that they were in the soil of the land. They were on the great ground, Jormungandr. And they were standing there within the ceremonial space. And all of these different symbols connected to that. and they would see the tree, and the tree would be Yggdrasil. The grove was Yggdrasil. So it all connects together, and it creates this symbolic structure that when you perform a rite, you go into that circle, you go into that great ground, that Jormungand, and it becomes all these different symbols. It becomes that right brain, that right brain, abstract mentality, almost like hypnotism, where you go in and all of these symbols are immersed around you. So this is a huge discovery for us. You see all these people online all the time who are posting pictures of their altar, and they're beautiful, beautiful layouts. And now we actually have a symbolic structure where you can take these elements and take these implements and say, hey, now we can build a symbol around it, an actual symbol that connects to things that we're seeing in cross-cultural references, and we're seeing in the lore, and we're seeing in saga references, and we can break all of this down and show how this works, okay? So, anybody wants to discuss this, anybody wants to talk to us about this, debate it, we're fine with that, because we can bring this evidence to the table, and we think that this is a game changer for heathenry, because it represents a whole new level for ritual for us, okay? So I'm going to sign off, and anybody want to hit me up? We're doing a lot of work on like this. This is a lot of stuff that's coming out. There's going to be a lot of different elements, a lot of different things we're going to be talking about and showing these symbolic structures so that you can perform these rites and that you can have this for your clan, your hearth, your tribe, whatever you're doing, your kindred. You can bring these symbolic elements to the table. All right? So everybody have a great night, and hail